Hey, I'm Joe, and today I'm going to be tackling another project on my 1979 Honda CBX. So I need to do a restoration of the rear brakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my master cylinder and rear caliper that look like this, and I'm going to restore them and make them look like this. So I'll go through and do a complete rebuild, and I'll show you how I do it, how I powder coat, and all that fun stuff. All right, enjoy.
That doesn't look like brake fluid. No wonder the brake wasn't working. This is a great example of why you need to flush your brake fluid periodically. The rear brake was frozen. You can see it in one of my earlier videos, so it wasn't moving at all. So I'm trying to disassemble and clean everything. I'd like to reuse the caliper and the master cylinder if I can, but there's a lot of gunk and things that I'm going to have to clean out because fluid is not going to flow through that. So I need to get this all cleaned up and I'll see what I can do. There is a snap ring that I'm going to try and get out so that I can better clean all of this. And I'm going to do what I can to remove a bunch of this material. And I've got some brake cleaner that I can use to clean the inside of this, but this is going to need a thorough cleaning because you can't have any of this even when you refill it because you don't want to re-gunk up your lines. So there's a snap ring in here. Hopefully I can get to it, and it's holding in this, which is on a spring. So you can see the spring right in there. All right, let's see if I can even get the snap ring to move. All right, to make it easier, let's separate these because it looks like this can just screw off. So let me unscrew that. All right, so there we go. So that's coming off now. And I should be able to get this off as well. So let's try putting this in the vise. So see these flat areas? Should be able to hold it there without damaging these threads. And then let's see. All right, so it looks like it is moving. So I'll hit it with this PB blaster. This will help with any of the rust that's on it. All right. So we have much better access to this now. Yeah, I do worry that this is rusted and has seized to the inside. That will make this more difficult to get off. Yeah, you can definitely tell when this stuff is not maintained. I mean, who knows how long the back brake was frozen when it looks like this. Yeah, I can't even push down on this with force. So who knows what else is in there. All right, so something we can do. I have Evaporust, which is a liquid that I can submerge this in, and it'll help eat away at a bunch of the rust. Right, if the metal's damaged, you know, that's not going to work. But, you know, if we can get the majority of this off, maybe we can get some of this metal to move, and then we can actually take a better look at what's going on. Because it would be nice if we could sandblast this, right, get it down to bare metal, you know, get everything clean, and then we can, you know, paint this and then get it back into working order. I know there's also rebuild kits for this that you can buy that has new springs and pieces. So that's something I'm gonna have to look into because I'm gonna need, I think, a rebuild kit for the rear caliper as well. All right, so I have a little pink cup. I think I bought these from Lowe's or Home Depot. And then here is the Evaporust. This is really nice because it binds to the rust and it actually pulls all that rust away from the iron. It's supposed to be pretty safe on things like rubber. I don't think there's anything on here I'm worried about. So I'll just put this in here and then I'll dump this over top and then I will just let this sit. So I'll just fully submerge it. And And then I will let this sit overnight. And then I've also got a couple screws that I'll just toss in. So I'll just move this out of the way, because I'm sure if I leave it here, I'm going to knock into it. All right, so we let this master cylinder sit for a couple days. So let's see if this helped anything. So this snap ring up at the top seemed like it was pretty seized and gunked in there. So let's clean this off and see if we can get this removed. I already bought a rebuild kit for this, so it should have everything I need to get it back to working shape, as long as I can get that piece off. And then we'll probably sandblast this to clean it all up. And then we'll powder coat it to get it back to a clean state. Let's see how this looks. So definitely looks better than it did, but I don't know if this ring is going to move at all. I mean, I think the metal is going to bend before I can even get it to move. We may just have to cut this all off, because all of this is a part of the rebuild kit. So this piece of metal, as well as this. So I may just have to take a Dremel, cut this off, and then Dremel down through this. All right, so we'll take an angle grinder to this, and then we'll see if we can get a Dremel in there to cut up that ring so we can pull it out. So I think I'll make a couple cuts like this just to see if I can possibly bend this out. That may make it a little easier too. Alright, so it does look like this snap ring is moving now. So it looks like part of the snap ring is starting to come out. I don't know if this is all of it though. Okay. So that was painful. So now we have to see if this comes out. Perfect. And then we'll see if there's any damage inside here. Right, there's the other end. Okay, so as long as I can get the snap ring back in there, we should be in good shape. It looks like the lip is still intact. So we'll just have to test it once we get that rebuild kit. All right, now I'm pretty sure this is supposed to come out, but it's jammed. So I'm gonna put it in the vise and see if I can at least compress to loosen this up. And then maybe we can get this out, because I can see the spring down in there. So I'm also gonna spray this PB blaster in there. See if that helps loosen up anything. So I'm just gonna use the screw that I cut off. And let's see if we can work it loose. All right, still working it. I'm just trying to hold it because I don't want this thing shooting off once in my hand. Okay, that didn't look like it was working at all. The next thing we need to do is drill through it. All right, so finally managed to get it out. Basically just pushing here and then pushing up on the spring down here. So now I can pull this out. So definitely gunked up. But now I'm to the point where once I get this piece in the spring out, then I can clean everything up. And then when I get the rebuild kit, I'll be able to put it back together. Yeah, that one was pretty difficult to get off. I had to mount this back to the bike and then use a 14mm socket to remove it. So you always want to try and clean up brake fluid the best you can, because brake fluid will eat through your paint. All right, let's get this off while we can. And then yeah, you can see all the corrosion around the brake piston. All right, so I had to do the same thing, put it back on the bike, and then I had to hit this with a hammer to get this to spin out. Now I do have another rear brake caliper. It's used, that I bought from Lewis, who's got a bunch of CBX parts down in Florida. And I may want to use that instead. You can see there is fluid in there. It's not all gunked up. But getting out this piston, that's not going to be fun at all. Yeah, usually what I can do is connect my air hose up, and then I can force the piston out. It does put a lot of force behind it. The problem is, I'm not sure if that's going to work because it doesn't look like the piston's going to move. So I may have to try a couple things to get this out. Sometimes you can put a couple sockets in there. Other times you can put a wrench on it. It's definitely tricky, but let's compare this to the other caliper to see which one we want to use. All right, so this is the other caliper. You can see this has a bunch of corrosion as well. It looks about the same. It looks like there's just damage in different places, right? This was sort of the piece I was worried about, but if I'm going to sandblast this anyway, it's not really an issue. This is more of what I was worried about, right? This was all scraped up here. So I would need to file that down. So let's try doing that. Okay, that one didn't work. All right, so finally get this to a point in the vise where I can spin the piston out. There we go. So we got the piston out, and the best thing to do is replace it, especially if there's any type of pitting. We know this one was corroded. So we've got teeth marks. The pitting's okay, but still, I would replace it because of all the damage I did up here getting it out. And on the inside, actually looks pretty good. So this is salvageable. Very nice. So let's see if we can do the same thing to the other one. Yeah, this one is really taking everything I got. I think this one's just a lost cause. I think I'm probably going to damage it more than I want, just trying to get this out. But we got one out. So we're going to use this. We'll just have to clean it up the best we can. I'll have to see if I can grind down some of this, but we should be in business. All right, so next, I'm going to sandblast the part. Let's get all the paint off, let's clean it up. I have all the holes plugged just so none of the sand gets in. So I just finished sandblasting the brake caliper, and you can see we got it down to pretty much bare metal. There's a couple places where I could have done a little bit better. I'm a little low on sand right now, so it's a little tedious, but I think it cleaned up really well. Some of those marks, I've sanded out some of them. I could probably sand a little bit more to get it smoother. So the next step in the brake restoration journey, I'd like to get it back to black. And I think the best way to do that is to powder coat, because the powder coat is pretty resistant to brake fluid. Brake fluid eats through a lot, so you have to be very careful if you get it on paint. So giving it the best protection is what we want to do. It also lays down pretty smoothly. So one of the things you have to be careful with when you're powder coating is it is much thicker than paint. So if you have screw holes and things like that, it can actually make it difficult for you to get that screw back in. So what you typically do is you take little plugs and you take tape and you wrap up any areas that you don't want to get powder in, right? So this is where the piston slides. I already went through and I took a bunch of picks and I wanted to clean around this ring. This ring is where the rubber seal sits. I know it looks like crap right now. We have a new seal. We don't want to reuse these old damaged ones. So we have rebuild kits for both the master cylinder and for the rear caliper. We have new piston, so it's all going to be hopefully better than new when we're done. Took a little bit of Scotch-Brite just to go around to remove any of the material that was sticking up here. We don't want to take off too much material, and then I was using just some brake clean to clean out the inside. So I'm going to have to tape up these surfaces as well as these holes. I don't want to powder coat with these in, and then I'll probably plug up a couple of these others as well. That way I don't have any issues with trying to get some of these parts back together when we're ready. I'm less concerned with the inside of this. This is where the brake pads sit in, so this won't be visible, but all of this will be visible on the outside. So we've got plugs that look like this. And we've got various sizes. What I can do is just pull them out and see if any of these fit in these specific holes. And I'll have to remove some of the gunk that's on them from the last time we used them. Okay, so we'll just push it in like that, and that'll protect all of the threads. So we'll do that to the rest of the holes. Then I'm probably going to put tape around this one. So I'm going to use this tape that is high heat resistant. This prevents the powder from getting inside where the piston is. The other tricky part is how I'm going to mount this. And I think what I'll do is, instead of having this in here, I'm just going to run a wire inside this to hold it up. And then on this one, I can always run it around like this. All right, so I hung the parts on the rack, made sure that they fit inside of the oven. I got the oven heating over here. And then I hit them with a degreaser just to clean them off before I pop them in the oven. So I'll put them in the oven for 5 minutes just to get them heated up a little bit. And then I'll bring them back out and start powder coating. All right, so we're gonna use jet black. I've got the air compressor set to about 5 to 8 PSI. And then I've got the lead hooked up, and I'm just going to press this button as I start covering it in powder. Here's what the parts look like after I just put them in the oven. Got it set to about 400 degrees. I set the timer for 20 minutes. All right, so they're done in the oven. So you can see they've got a nice gloss to them. And then we'll see after they cool down what they look like, see if I missed any spots. All right, so let's check the finish. It looks pretty good in most spots. It does look like a little bit around this rim isn't great. Let's remove this tape. Let's see, so that'll work. Let's pull this out. Doesn't look like it got on any of the threads, which is good. Remove the tape here. There's powder coat here. And we'll remove this one. So this looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. So let's check the brake caliper. Okay. So this looks much better than it did. Sure, it's not perfect, but this is exactly what I wanted it to look like for my build. So let's remove this. Yeah, these plugs worked really well to prevent anything from getting in there. And then we'll remove the tape here. Okay, there were a couple places where I got through, but nothing major. Excellent. Yeah, that looks great. Looks like I got good coverage everywhere. Maybe a little bit in here. I could have done a little bit better, but that's not going to be visible at all. Let me pull this one out as well. Still need to clean this up just a little bit. But perfect. So these are ready for the rebuild. And I'll do a quick comparison to what a powder-coated caliper looks like compared to what an OEM caliper looks like. Right, so you can see, you know, this one hasn't been touched up in 40 years. But really happy with how easy this can be restored. You know, there's not many pieces to it. You know, there's not many little crevices. So pretty easy to get in, right? Just little sandblast, powder coat, you know, clean out, and then you're good. All right, so now it's time to start the brake rebuild. So we have the rear caliper and the rear master cylinder. I have a rebuild kit for both of them that I'm going to use, and this will get it back to running as good as new. So the way that this works is this spring is going to drop down. This cap is going to sit on top of this spring. So because this is new and dry, we do want to lubricate it a little bit with brake fluid, and that will make working with this stuff a little easier. So I'm going to be using .4 brake fluid. What I'll do is I'll lubricate this just a little bit. And then this is going to go over top. And then I'll make sure that I lubricate around this as well. So this is going to go down there. Because this is spring-loaded, you should be wearing eye protection when you're working around any of these, just so it doesn't shoot out and accidentally hit you in the face. And we will push that down. And then we will set it inside of this nut, just like that. And to help, I'll use a clamp. Okay, if we push this down far enough, I'll hold it in there. And I'm just going to use to help push in this ring clamp. So I think we're in a good spot. So it looks like we have a working master cylinder again. So the last piece that's going to go on here, right, which I'll clean up a little bit, is I'm going to screw this on. And then this is what actually attaches to the rest of the assembly. And then what we also need to get on is, I have a new O-ring here. And this is going to attach right here where the old one was. So put this new one on here. And then it's going to slide in this direction, right? This is the bottom. And then this is going to point towards the top, where we run the hose in. All right, so instead of using the original screws, I have new ones that are the same size, but they're Allen head instead of Phillips. So we'll screw these in each side. All right, so that was as tight as I can get it. Hopefully that's sealed on both sides. Okay, next, so we'll clean up this piece a little bit. See if I can take a little Scotch-Brite pad to it. And then before I screw this on, I'm going to put on this boot. And this boot is going to go around right here. Okay, so that creates a nice seal. This will help protect that mechanism that moves. And then we can screw this piece on like this. And then once I get this to the right height, I can use this nut to lock this in place. Okay, this master cylinder is done. So next is the rear caliper. So in this rebuild kit, I have a new piston. This is going to slide in like this. I have this ring. It's going to go right in here. Then I have these that I believe are going to mount in between the caliper. This is a dust shield for the piston. And then I will need to reuse my old nipple because they didn't provide a new one for me to use. So next, I've got a little bit of grease. These are designed for brakes. So I will put this around this piece of rubber. And I'll insert this one like that. Should sit in. And that will push the piston down just like that. And then I want to put the dust shield on. When this dust shield is down around the silver part of the caliper, that's when we can put this ring on like this. screwdriver to push down the back. This is definitely going to take a little while. All right, so it looks like this is all the way down now. So it looks like that caliper is ready to be mounted. Now to mount the brake up, I'm going to put the brake pads in place, like that. So once the brake pads are in, I'm going to slide these on, and I grease these with Moxie grease, Moxie EP, and then these need to be turned. So I'll push each one in. So I drop the caliper down. And then I can screw in these bolts. Just like that. All right, so rear caliper is installed. Next up is the rear master cylinder. This is going to be a little tricky because you have to get these in the right order. So the rear master cylinder is going to be mounted here, and there's going to be 2 bolts that go in. But there's also a little lever down here that a pin needs to go through. Now I'm going to grease up this pin. I want to make sure everything moves smoothly. I'll run it through real quick. All right, so I got a good bit of grease on there. So let's try and get these right there. Longer one goes up top. This shorter one goes down below. Put this in. I'm going to try and get this spring set up. So let's attach the spring to the correct spot, like that. Okay, that's much better. And then we'll feed this through. All right, so I gotta put a little bit of tension on this, get it to screw in. Okay. So now what I would need to do is just tap this in a little bit. All right, then let's make sure we can screw this in. Perfect. All right, thanks for watching. If you want to get notifications when I release new videos, just hit subscribe. Thanks.